around here. We're on a mission to revive a country, and I'll tell you that the problem in America, I was listening to Kathy speak, is that I hear the applause in this room when the things that get said here you can't say out there, right? Fear has become infectious across our country, right? We have a culture of fear in America that says you can't say what you actually think. I'll tell you what the best measure of the health of our country is. Okay, it's not the number of ballots that get cast every November. That's just the final act at the end of the process. You want to know how well America is doing? It is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. Okay, right now we're doing poorly because fear has spread like an epidemic. But I'll tell you something else. Courage can be contagious too. Okay, the only thing we got to do is to start talking openly again. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to keep this pretty fluid. I'm going to kick this off with a few thoughts of my own. You know what's a little fun? We're going to have a little bit of fun tonight is actually, there's Fox News. Some of you, who's seen me on Fox News before? Anybody? Good number. So you're all going to be on Fox with me tonight. We got a little TV hit in the middle. You're all going to hold up your signs. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do Q&A. Keep this conversation flowing, because one of the things we don't do enough in this country is have that chance to say what we actually believe. And my commitment to you is that when you find yourself as the only person in a room who believes what you do, maybe it's a school board meeting, maybe it's a parent-teacher conference, maybe it's a nonprofit board meeting, maybe it's a company you work at, when you speak up and state exactly what you believe, you know what's going to happen? You'll find out that you weren't the only person in that room who believed what you did. And that is how courage becomes contagious in this country. We're going to start getting some practice with that tonight. So I'll tell you a few oddities that I see in our culture. There's a few different odd things going on at the same time. On one hand, you have that culture that Kathy described, that you saw with Don Lemon the other day. I say, they give you lemons, you make lemonade. Okay, that's my saying. This culture of racial wokeism that says that your identity is based on the color of your skin. That if you're black, you're inherently disadvantaged. That if you're white, you're privileged. That, as Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley said it, she said the same thing that Don Lemon did. She said it more eloquently, actually. She said that we don't want any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. Now, Kathy doesn't fit her description of what counts as a black face. I don't fit her description of what counts as a brown voice. But if you think about it, what does that actually mean? It means that when your race goes from being about your skin color to being about the content of the ideas you're allowed to espouse, then any disagreement with those ideas automatically makes you a racist. And there's no greater damnation in modern America than to be called a racist. So when given that choice between pledging allegiance to that new religion and being tarred with that scarlet R, that's what Don Lemon tried to do to me, then everyday Americans start bending the knee. And that's what creates that culture of fear in our country. So that's the first of these cults, right? These cult-like religions in American life, this racial wokeism. I wrote a whole book about it. You see some signs that say stop wokeness. That's what it means. Now, there's a second little piece to the puzzle, okay? Right around the same time as you see the rise of that racial cult in America, you see the rise of this new radical gender ideology, the cult of transgenderism in America. There's something interesting about this one. The same religion, there's so many letters, LGBTQIA, they just got tired at the end, they just put a little plus at the end of it, okay? The same religion that told you for years that the sex of the person you're attracted to is hardwired on the day that you're born, because it had to be in order for that to qualify as a civil right. They now say that your own sex is completely fluid over the course of your life. These two things can't make sense at the same time unless you're operating according to a cult-like belief system. And then it makes a similar move to that first religion. Here's what they say. Actually, Peter Thiel, he spoke at the Republican National Committee nominating Trump in 2016, after he spoke, the leading LGBTQIA plus magazine in the country, The Advocate, said that he is actually not gay, even though he's a man attracted to men, because he does not represent, they said it, the gay voice, right? So now you're seeing a pattern. Then you see the rise, right around the same time now, this other cult in America that's obsessed with the carbon we emit into the atmosphere, the climate cult. Now this one's scary, because this one deals with your pocketbook. It looks like it's here to stay unless we do something about it, and we will. But what the climate cult says is that you must cease all carbon emissions here in America at all costs, while turning a blind eye to even worse carbon emissions that we're shipping to places like China on the other side of the world. That'll also tell you that, oh, well, we want carbon-free energy production, but we're also opposed to the best known form of carbon-free energy production to mankind, and that is nuclear energy. Why? Because nuclear energy might be too good at solving their problem, and they wouldn't be able to use that as a vehicle to achieve their agenda of global equity. So I could go on and on and on. We could spend the whole night on the contradictory cults rising up in American life. But the real question to ask is, what the heck is going on in our country? Right? You think it's a coincidence that we see these things at the same time? Climatism, transgenderism, wokeism. I didn't even talk about COVIDism tonight. I could just go on and on, okay? Ukrainism, okay? This is, what the heck is going on in our country? Here's the answer. We're in the middle of a national identity crisis. Faith, patriotism, hard work, family. These things have disappeared. All right, that leaves a moral vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when poison begins to fill the void. That is what allows wokeism and transgenderism and climatism to thrive, to fester, because it is preying on our own insecurities deep on the inside. The left in America, they understand this. They understand people my age. All right, let me tell you something. I'm 37 years old. I was born in 1985. I am actually the first millennial candidate to ever run for U.S. president as a Republican, believe that or not. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll tell you something about my generation. All right, it's just true about us. It's true about people younger than us. What was your name again? We were chatting before. What's your name? Fred. Fred is 17. He's the generation after me, Gen Z. I'll tell you something about our generations in this country, okay? We're hungry for a cause. We're hungry for purpose and meaning and identity. We mean well. We're just hungry for it at a time in our national history when the things that used to fill that hunger, they've disappeared in modern American life. We're like bats. We're like blind bats flying around, lost in a cave, trying to figure out where we are. And we send out these signals like a bat does. Sonar signals, echolocation, they teach you in science class, okay? What does it do? It bounces off a wall, something that is true, and then it comes back and it says, this is where I am. I send out a signal, it bounces off my family. These are the two parents who brought me into this world. That is true, that is real, it is mine. It bounces back, it tells me, this is where I am. Bounces off a belief in God, the one true God I know I believe in, who gave me and guides me through my life. It bounces back, tells me this is where I am. I am a citizen of this nation. For me, the nation that allowed me to live the full arc of the American dream as the kid of immigrants, it bounces back, tells me this is where I am. I work hard, I create things in the world that have meaning and purpose, that are true. That bounces back, tells me this is where I am. Well, what happens when those things disappear? We send out those signals, and then we don't get anything back. This is what the left has mastered in America. They create artificial sources of identity instead. You want to live in America? Here's what's missing in the conservative movement, right? We're built, for the last 10 years, we've been built on being reactionary, defined by what the left gives us and says we're against that. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. We have an opportunity to answer that with a different vision of our own. Let me give you mine. The individual, the family, the nation, and God. That is what a vision looks like for our country. Kathy asked that question, what does it mean to be an American? You get that deer in the headlights response, that blank stare in response. Let me tell you what it means to be an American. It means you believe in the ideas, the vision that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. That you believe in ideas like merit and excellence, that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why I became the first U.S. presidential candidate in history to say that, yes, I will end race-based affirmative action in America, because it is a cancer on our national soul. Thank you. Means you believe, I was talking to, I forgot who I was talking to, met so many of you already. Rule of law. We were talking about it. Rule of law in this country means that people like my parents should be able to come to this country through the front door if they follow the law and actually make contributions to this country. They did. They followed the rules. They paid their taxes. They raised 2 kids. Both of us went on to found companies that helped thousands of Americans. They taught us that there's more to life than figuring out your gender, than going through the aimless motions, that there's such a thing as purpose, that you can make a sacrifice, that entering a marriage involves a sacrifice, that having children involves a sacrifice, but you can make a sacrifice if you know what you're sacrificing for. We should want more immigrants like them. But that also means saying no, unapologetically no, if your first act of entering this country is a law-breaking one. And that is not racist, that is not xenophobic, that is what it means to be an American. Okay? Means you believe in ideas like free speech, that you're committed to ideas like open debate, because that's how we settle our political differences. They made it the First Amendment, that Constitution that I signed. It's the First Amendment for a reason. I didn't just sign it. I said speak freely, and then I signed it. You want to know why they made it first? For a reason. Our founding fathers knew what they were doing. That you're free to speak, and you are, and you are, and you are, as long as I get to speak my mind in return. That's the bargain of what it means to be an American. And I'll tell you this, that isn't just some liberal arts luxury. Yeah, I went to places like Harvard and Yale. Ironically, they don't even believe in free speech in those places anymore. But free speech is a requirement for truth in this country. You think we would have closed those schools for as long as we did if you had been allowed to say that we shouldn't have closed those schools? You think we would have waited 3 years to figure out that this virus originated in a lab in China if you had been allowed to say that the virus originated in a lab in China? Free speech, in the name of censoring misinformation, we created misinformation. It is a requirement to get to the right answer. I trained as a scientist. I went to Harvard, studied molecular biology. I've developed 5 medicines personally that are FDA-approved products. One for a rare genetic disease in kids. 100% of them die by the age of 3 if they're left untreated. One of the medicines I worked on, 70% of those kids now live lives of a more normal duration. Prostate cancer, you name it. I care about science. My wife is here. Corbin, you want to stand up? She's a throat surgeon. She does surgery on elderly people who can't swallow every day. We care about the scientific method. We're not going to be people who are anti-science, as they'll label us for saying this. Free speech is a precondition for science. It is a precondition for truth. It is a precondition for peace in this country. Because if you tell people they cannot speak, that is when they scream. You tell people they cannot scream, that is when they tear things down. Our founding fathers knew what they're doing. I have this radical dream. Our founding fathers had this radical dream. What's the threat to free speech? It's the rise of this new managerial class in America. They knew how to deal with it. They had the same dream that I have as a citizen today, that the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the people who actually run the government, rather than this cancerous managerial federal bureaucracy that actually runs the show today. You see, that is why I've said, as the next president of the United States, I'm not just going to make some shallow promise to reform the administrative state. You've heard that before. Now, the right answer is, if you have a bureaucracy that runs that deep, you have one answer left. You shut it down, starting with agencies that should have never existed in the first place. You want to start with one? The Department of Education. We will shut it down. Should have never existed. We will put it back out of existence. $83 billion a year spent by that one government bureaucracy. We've done the math on this. You shut that down for 25% of that budget, you could actually put 3 armed security guards in every single school across this country. You tell me what's a better use of money than that. Protect our children, right? You have a cancerous bureaucracy that is so corrupt, an administrative police state that now says that if you're the most popular person of the opposition party running against the party in power, that we will use the police state to arrest you. That is not the America that I learned to pledge allegiance to. That is the corrupt federal police state that we have today. It is why I said I will shut down the FBI. We will shut down the IRS. We will shut down the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and create a new apparatus to take its place, built from scratch if we need to. But we have to solve the cancer. You're not going to tinker around the edges with a Band-Aid. I'm not going to put Betsy DeVos to just sit up on top of the Department of Education, because guess what? After she's long gone and Trump is long gone, we still have the U.S. Department of Education. You have to be willing to gut the thing. And I'll tell you this, if I can't work for that federal government for more than 8 years and collect a paycheck suckling at the teat of the U.S. taxpayer for 8 years, which I think is a good thing, then I don't think any one of those federal bureaucrats reporting to me should be able to work for that bureaucracy for more than 8 years either. Replace these civil service protections with term limits. I learned something from the private sector. I've been a CEO. I founded a number of companies. One of them, the biggest one's a multi-billion-dollar biotech business I built from scratch. All right, that's the American dream for me. Yes, I did go to law school, but I didn't have to go to law school to tell you this one. Okay, Article 2 of that Constitution that I signed still works the same way. There's 3 branches of government, not 4. There's no 4th administrative state. I'll tell you how it works. If somebody's working for me and I can't fire them, that means they don't work for me. It means I work for them because I'm responsible for what they do without having any authority to change it. I refuse to be the hollowed out husk of a puppet leader sitting in that White House for an administrative state. I'll tell you how they view it. They view the elected officials as cute little inconveniences that come around every few years while they're the ones who actually run the show. The thing that we're going to have to do is we have to gut that administrative state to actually restore, yes, self-governance over aristocracy in this country, because that too is what it means to be an American. Okay, we revive these basic ideals. Like what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about corporate tax rates. I have my view on that. Generally, I like lower taxes, okay? We're not debating whether ivermectin treats COVID. Those are details. These are the basic rules of the road, right? This is fundamental stuff, right? The divide in this country today isn't even between Republicans and Democrats, if you ask me. It is between those of us who are pro-American. Do we believe in those ideals and the basic rules of the road? Will we stand by them? Will we make a sacrifice for them? Or are you fundamentally anti-American? Do you wish to apologize for the existence of a nation founded on those ideals? And that exists in this country. But the good news is, if you view it that way, it's not 50-50 anymore. It's 80-20 easily in our favor. Half the remaining 20 are kids my age, kids younger than me, that did not even learn what those ideals were in the first place. bring half of them along. What we do in 2024 is we deliver a landslide election like Ronald Reagan did in 1980. That is how we revive our national character. That is how we revive a sense of national unity, not by showing up in the middle and compromising on our principles, but by being uncompromising about our principles, embracing the radicalism of those American ideals themselves, because that is what makes us us. That is what makes America great. That is what makes America itself. And if we can revive those ideals, then we stand up to the actual threats we face on the global stage. You know, what's on top of the list for me, it's not Ukraine. It is communist China. We have to declare independence from our enemy. That is different. Thank you. Thank you. This is our moment. Right? That is the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson, he's my favorite president, that's why I talk about him so often. That is the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson would sign if he were alive today. That's the Declaration of Independence that I will sign as your next president, because I'll tell you this, I don't want my children or my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren to be a bunch of Chinese serfs working on Chinese-bought land in this great nation of ours. We are dependent today on our enemy for our entire modern way of life. Even Ronald Reagan, he's my hero. Okay, he did not face a USSR that put the phones in our pockets or the shoes on our feet. We didn't have phones in our pockets back then. Things have changed a little bit. It's not 1980 anymore. Today we're in a codependent relationship with our enemy. Codependent relationships do not end well. The only question is who ends it first. The sooner we end it, the better that is going to be for us. And there's some easy things we can do. We can unshackle ourselves from this climate cult that shackles the United States and our energy sector while leaving China untouched. That's a no-brainer. We can hold China accountable using every financial lever available for unleashing hell on the world with the biggest pandemic in over a century. That's the easy stuff. But I say we've got to go further to do what is hard. I'm prepared to go the distance and actually get this done, saying that we will ban most U.S. businesses from doing business in China unless and until they reform their behaviors. Okay, that is what courage looks like. You have to have a spine of steel. You cannot compromise on that. All right, I'm going to be very honest with you. That will require some sacrifice. But it's like my parents taught me. You can make that sacrifice if you know what you are sacrificing for. And that is this thing we call America. And here's the secret. If you actually get a leader who has the conviction of spine to do it, who is not beholden to any donor class, and I'm going to be really honest with you, I did not enter this race ringing a tin can, taking a hat in hand, asking any donor for permission to run. I lived the full arc of the American dream. I'm proud of it. We put an 8-figure sum of our family's own money into this campaign. We'll stop at nothing. We got 20,000 small dollar donors and counting. People gave $1 to this campaign. That's actually what's going to lift this up. You can't be beholden to somebody, Democrat, Joe Biden directly beholden, or Republican indirectly beholden, or else they're not going to do it. You need an outsider who is actually willing to get that job done, who has a spine of steel, who has the view not of Chamberlain but of Churchill, thinking on the timescales of history instead of election and donation cycles, to stand across the table from Xi Jinping and say, I mean it, when we will pull out unless you stop your data theft and intellectual property theft and buying up American land and co-opting American universities. We will really do it, and I mean it, okay? We will not stand by and watch as you rob our nation and turn us into a bunch of Chinese slaves. I refuse to do it. You know what's going to happen? He will back down because he's in a tougher spot than we are. It's the Achilles heel of any autocrat in history. He actually ruined China last year with the zero COVID policy, which, by the way, had about as much to do with COVID as our climate agenda has to do with the climate, which is to say nothing at all. It is about dominion, power, control, and punishment. That's how autocrats roll. We're going to use that back against them. Okay, he will fold because they're in a tougher spot than we are, but you have to be willing to make that sacrifice, and that requires rediscovering who we really are. Right? People ask me, I say, stop wokeness. They say, why are you just fighting the culture war? What about the economy? What about foreign policy? You know what I care about our culture? Because I care about our economy, and because I care about our foreign policy, because we are stronger when we believe in ourselves. Our economy is stronger when we know what America actually is. We can project strength to Xi Jinping abroad when we are actually strong at home. These things go together. You have to have that backbone to actually stand up. We have spent a decade celebrating our diversity and our differences. And that's fine. Our diversity can be a beautiful thing, okay? You have some different shades of melanin in this room tonight. I'm glad I brought one of them. All right, that's good. That's fine. I'm looking around the room. I see a couple of different genders, 2 of them. Okay, so that's good. It's nice. We're diverse. Great. Give yourself a pat on the back. So what? Who cares about our diversity if there's nothing greater that binds us together across that diversity? Just think about it for a second, right? We took a beautiful drive from the airport, watched the American terrain. What are we? Bunch of different 2-legged higher mammals walking that geographic terrain, doing what our iPhones told us to do on a given day. That's how America looks to me sometimes. But that isn't the America that we pledged allegiance to. That isn't the America that I learned to pledge allegiance to as a kid. The America I learned to pledge allegiance to as a kid abides by what's written on the bottom of every one of our coins and dollar bills for a reason: e pluribus unum. From many, one. You see, that is the dream that brought this country together to win a revolutionary war 250 years ago. That is the dream that reunited us after the Civil War 160 years ago. That is the dream that won us 2 world wars and the Cold War and every war since then. It's the dream that still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over fractious group identity and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, is going to defeat us. That is what this thing we call American exceptionalism is all about. And I promise you this, that is what we will revive to save this great nation, our great nation. I thank you all. I say God bless our country. God bless your families. God bless the United States of America. We're going to open this up and have a conversation tonight. I'm really looking forward to hearing from every one of you.